am APAP.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
Association of Performing Arts
Professionals.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
Presenters.
Producers.
Performers.
Promoters.
Prototypers.
Provocateurs.
Peer support. Possibilities.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
Artists.
Educators.
Mentors.
Board member.
Agents.
Risk takers.
Managers.
Students.
Colleagues.
Partners.
Community.
Family.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
I am APAP.
我来自 APAP. Je suis APAP.
Yo sono APAP.
Ich bin APAP.
私は APAP です。
Soy APAP.
We are APAP.
We are APAP.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage President and CEO Mario Garcia Durham.
Welcome to the opening of the closing of our conference. God, Lord. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Yay! This gathering, I think, has been just so great and uplifting, and I don't know about you, but it's been really nice to see friends talk about the arts, talk about what we're passionate about with dear, dear, dear ones. So can we please give a round of applause for this wonderful spirit of, away from it all. I want to take a moment again to thank our sponsors, our more than 100 volunteers, and the production crew behind the scenes that made this conference such a success. Yes, please. Thank you. And thank you. There's going to be a number of thank yous, so happy to do that. I also want to thank and acknowledge again the superb leadership and guidance we received from our outstanding conference committee, Liz Lerman, Simone Eccleston, and Kevin Spencer. Please give them an amazing round of applause for this. Just kidding. Keep your hands warm. There's going to be a number of applause requests. Also, I want to thank our conference committee. We're so grateful for your time and commitment over the past 4 years and the past 4 days. Applause, please, for the conference committee. And I want to especially thank and acknowledge our very, very tiny, considering a conference this size, but hardworking APAP team. They make me proud throughout the year, and what they do on your behalf always amazes me. They really, really care and really, really want to make sure your experience, not only at the conference, but in every interaction when you call our office, when you have any sort of issues, they really want to make it right. So I'm going to call out names, and there's some that are listed here. There's also a number that we have here for conference. So if you can please stand if you're here. Vicki Abrash, Jason Allen, Teresa Bennett, Andrea Boccia, Krista Bradley, Kevin Hasser, Jarrell Jenkins, Melinda Lambert, Sarah Martin, Judy Moore, Sue Noseworthy, Robbie Otley, Megan Redmond, Katrina Robinson, Taylor Rambo, Maggie Shaw, Keisha Shorter, Margaret Stevens, Jenny Thomas, Kaylin Saylor, Alicia Anstead, Leah Fröhlingheisen, Kristen Cooper, and also Adam Kissick. Oh, by the way, Adam, where are you? He's right here. Adam and his wife are just about to have their first baby. She cannot be here because she's about ready to have their first baby. So, Adam, congratulations. Christy, she's usually here with him. Carol Miller, Bill Carlton, Diane Seaman, Caitlin Sapinor Davis, Tim Phillips and Valerie Phillips, Corey Rusicano, Steve-O Arnazzi, Tyrone McLean, Hannah Byam, Don Walker, Eve Evans, and our signer, Beth Zurif. Please give them all the round of applause they deserve. Thank you. Did I forget anyone? Thank you. You can do that on these presentations. There's one person I would like to give my heartfelt thanks to who has the privilege and the sometimes not privilege of being my other half. You've seen him running around. Craig, where are you? My other half, Craig Hornis. He volunteers for this conference as a production manager, so thank you, dear. So each year we work with the conference committee to identify a speaker who will deliver a high level of enthusiasm and inspiration to culminate. This is the talk that we hope you'll have in your ears as you go through the coming years. This is the last event of this conference. But before I introduce the speaker, I did want to acknowledge an individual who has been so helpful to APAP in so many different ways, not the least of which is to helping us with our plenary speakers, and that's Linda Brumbach. Linda, can you please stand? Linda, thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. So Bassem Youssef is Egypt's premier satirist. He has been termed both the Jon Stewart of Egypt and Egypt's most wanted. Jon Stewart has said, Bassem Youssef is my hero. His show, Al Bernameg, the show, had 30 million viewers before the Egyptian government shut it down. He is famous for using humor to criticize the most powerful dictators in his home country. In 2013, he was named one of the most 100 influential people in the world by Time magazine, as well as receiving the prestigious award, the International Press Freedom Award, given by his colleagues in the journalism industry, which I think is even more important each year. Variety critic Owen Gleiberman said of the film Tickling Giants, which documents Youssef's ordeal enduring physical threats, protest, and legal action, that it makes you understand how every society, ours more than ever, needs people like Bassem Youssef to demonstrate that laughter will always be one of the essential ways to keep power in check. As I state many times during the year with our work, that we do not necessarily deal with life and death situations. I would have to say that given our next speaker, he does deal with life and death situations. He is a leader who has the courage to accept realities and try to change those realities and hopefully make us laugh or smile. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bassem Youssef.
Thank you. You want to say something? You want to say something? You can say.
Yes. Also, I'm told that Bassem loves Q&A, so be thinking of questions as he's speaking, and we'll definitely build in Q&A time. Thank you, Bassem.
Thank you so much again. Hi. 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 Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be able to give the annual plenary speech for APAP. Like last week, I thought that you guys would change your mind because, according to your president, I come from a shithole country. How do you translate shithole country? Okay. Before I start my speech, I had a story about this last week. You know, Americans are very nice and very apologetic and very embarrassed of what's happening. So we were in a party with a mixed group of people, Middle Easterns, Americans, from everywhere. And I was with my friends, my people, my Middle Eastern people on the side. And one of my American friends came and he was very apologetic, very embarrassed. We're very sorry for what happened, so sorry for what he said. It's like, what did he say this time? And they said, and then he was very hesitant, and he said, well, you know, he just called like some of your countries like shithole countries. And then I looked to my friends, and my friends looked back at me, and we looked back at him and said, shithole countries? That sounds about right. I mean, like, why do you think we come here? And then he was very embarrassed. No, you come from great countries. Like, shh, don't say that. They're going to send us back. I mean, half of us here are on asylum, so don't say that. And yes. And what I find very interesting is like every time that Trump does something like this, like CNN goes and have panels and pundits, was the president racist? Thank you, Captain Obvious. Of course. I mean, he is telling this every single day. I mean, Trump is racist, bigoted, and incompetent. He is good enough to be a president of one of our shithole countries. So, anyways, that was that. And so I'm going to start. My speech is not going to be as funny. I actually want to share some very personal things in my speech today. I want this to be different. I was actually not supposed to be here. And I know that this is not because of the shithole country con, but like in general, I know that this might be a very unusual and strange statement to start one speech, but it is true. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here standing, talking to you about performance or art or satire or politics or anything to that matters. Nothing in this is realistic or logic. But again, logic is the one thing that is missing from my story. I was not trained to be a speaker or a performer or a comedian or a satirist. I was trained to be a heart surgeon, a doctor, or in layman's terminology, a nerd. Nerds do not tell jokes. Well, at least they do, but not very good ones. And nerds do not host TV shows. They don't have millions of people watching them. They do not get the chance to meet their icons and even get hosted on their primetime TV shows. Nothing of that happens to nerds. So as you can imagine, I was not supposed to do all of that. None of this should happen. I was not supposed to be here. My story begins in the Middle East. And I know when you hear the Middle East, you're scared, you're nervous, and you should. And because as you know, the Middle East is as scary as the Midwest. And I was raised in an Egyptian family. I was a doctor. My brother is an engineer. If we had a third brother who would be a lawyer or a dentist, would be almost Jewish. I chose medicine for a very logical Middle Eastern reason, which is to please our parents. And to add even more nerdiness to injury, I became a heart surgeon. To tell you the truth, I never really liked that career. I was never enjoying myself there. But I was told, I stuck to my career, trying to make the best of it. And I tried to make, I thought that like if I would change the country, I would change the place, I would be happier. So I took every single qualifying exam and I was qualified. I got the American license. And I wanted to find start another life in America as a doctor. And finally, I was accepted in a hospital in the greatest city on earth, Cleveland. I was accepted in a pediatric, don't hoo-hoo Cleveland, don't, no. I was accepted in a pediatric heart surgery position there, and I was extremely excited to go. And nothing can tell you how depressed I was in Egypt, like being excited to go to Cleveland. And at that time in Egypt, I, like many people living in Egypt, were politically apathetic. When you have a president in power for 30 years, which is, by the way, is known in the Middle East as a very short first term, when you have a political stagnation like that, you kind of lose hope in change. But change happened, and suddenly I found myself in the middle of it. How could that happen? I was not supposed to be here. I was supposed to be on a plane going to sunny Cleveland. I was not supposed to be in Egypt anymore. But suddenly, a revolution broke out in Egypt, and I come from a place in the world where revolutions don't just happen. Good Egyptians do not revolt, or at least this is what they tell us as we are growing up. And suddenly, thousands and thousands of our people took this to the streets, demanding the removal of the 30 years dictator. And the media called those people in the streets ungrateful, troublemakers, anarchists, and even traitors. How can you disobey our leader, our president, our father? You see, we Arabs respect the sanctity of human relations. We are family people. We like to have long-term relations with our dictators. we do not follow these erratic behaviors that you guys have here in the West, you know. I want a president, I want a president. It's just like, you deal with your presidents like Tinder dates. You always swiping to the left. Every 4 years, I want a new president, I want a new president. You're so empty from the inside, I don't know. That's why we are more grounded. When we have a president, he is a keeper. That is, he keeps power indefinitely. But it seems that Egyptians drank the Kool-Aid and just wanted to imitate you guys and started to ask for weird things like freedom and elections and stuff. So, I mean, we had a perfectly terrible and horrible thing. Why ruin it? So a revolution erupted, and I, like many others, went down to the streets, and I didn't know what to do. So I did what I was trained for, being a doctor, and I worked in the makeshift clinics in Tahrir Square, fixing the wounds of the people that were in the protests. And that was the reality that I viewed in the streets. But for the media, there was another reality. The media didn't acknowledge that this was a revolution. They said that this was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy orchestrated by the United States, Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, together. Our revolution has finally achieved world peace. I mean, this is amazing. Actually, to see that my country had a conspiracy against it orchestrated by all of these people, I felt kind of flattered. So, I mean, in Egypt, fake news is not just a term, it is a lifestyle. So, as I said, there was two realities. The one that in the streets, revolutions, revolting, protesting against the dictator, and another reality that in the media, where we are all called traitors and spies, or at best, brainwashed youth that want to bring down the country. The stories and the media that were making up were ridiculous. As a matter of fact, some of these stories, they claim that these masses, each and every protester were paid to be there. Some of the reports said that each protester were paid a sum of $50 and a bucket of KFC. I'm not making this up, a bucket of KFC. And it makes sense. I mean, Colonel Sanders is a member of the American military, so KFC and $50. So America, the next time you want to fill your streets for a revolution or a half-filled inauguration, you know what to do. So there were all kinds of rumors about the protesters being a bunch of criminals, sexual deviants who would engage in activities like using drugs, drinking alcohol, and I quote, complete sexual relationships. This is actually an actual quote from a pro-dictator celebrity who said he saw for his own eyes people engaging in complete sexual relations, which is, of course, different from incomplete sexual relations, also known as marriage. So to sum it up, these were a bunch of drug addicts, people having promiscuous sex, partying and drinking, pretty much like Burning Man. But instead of mojitos and vodka cocktails, we had Molotov cocktails. So that's the only difference. The people in Tahrir Square were totally vilified. I remember my mom was calling me to come back home. And I had to run to a quiet corner in the Tahrir Square to take the call. So as you can see, in the Middle East, we are scared of our moms than we are scared from the security forces. But anyways, the revolution continued, and we were successful in removing the dictator. And we thought that we could start something new, you know, like a new trend, like democracy. And somehow it really didn't work. I guess we didn't read the fine print. It's like these disclaimers for some of the items that you purchase on the internet. They say results will and may vary. It's kind of like when you buy a dress off the internet, it looks nothing like the picture. And this was democracy for us. It was kind of different. But as we in Egypt were trying to find our way, I looked back to how the media were misleading and they were brainwashing the people. And at that time, my papers from Cleveland were taking too long to arrive. And I started to do something different. I started to make these 5 minutes videos, making fun of how the media brainwashed and misled the public. And on my YouTube channel that was not supposed to be there, suddenly in a couple of weeks I had 5 million people watching. I never thought that anybody would watch, and suddenly millions of people were watching. These are the things that should not happen to a nerd. And suddenly every single network wanted me on their platform to make a political satire program. And then, as I was supposed to be signing my first TV deal, my papers from Cleveland arrived, and I was faced with a choice. Should I continue with my work, saving lives and saving people's hearts, or should I choose a life of empty fame and money? I chose the money, and I had a discussion with my mom because you know I was a doctor because of her and my dad, and then we agreed that I would take the offer as long as I continue to take my shifts in the hospital, so I would still be her son, the doctor, and of course, so as long as I'm continue to be a doctor and as long as TV paid well, I could keep my job. And I think my mom agreed for that arrangement because it meant that I would not have to leave her and go to Cleveland. And as you know, in the Middle East, mothers in the Middle East would like to keep their friends close and their enemies and sons much closer. So there I was, a TV host. I became responsible for producing a show that no one had a reference for in the Middle East. And that little voice in my head came back to me and telling me, you're not supposed to be here. That is not your job. You're not supposed to do that. It was a struggle, a very bumpy operation of trial and error. Many gave me 1 season tops before I failed. But in less than 2 years, we had 40 million people watching each episode of the show. Every Friday was like Super Bowl, with only more laughs, less commercial breaks, and no men in tights getting concussions. I found myself in the middle of a spotlight that I never asked for. I found myself writing, producing, hosting, telling jokes, singing and dancing on a stage in a theater with live audience. I was not supposed to be there. I should be the boring, nerdy doctor performing operations in a surgical theater, not performing on a real theater. We continued to do the show in a very unpredictable and unstable environment. And as we did that, we basically pissed off a lot of people. We worked under religious as well as military regimes, and we discovered that both of these regimes have one thing in common. They do not have a sense of humor. Authoritarian figures seem to be quite thin-skinned when it comes to sarcasm. Or in America's case, quite orange-skinned, so. Oh, what you're, oh, politically incorrect about Trump, anyways. I get invited a lot to speak about the importance of humor and satire in political discourse, and how it's an important factor in standing against oppression. But today, I want to talk about something a little bit different. I want to talk about how the oppressors face satire and humor. We like to speak about how satire stands in the face of the oppressors, but we never take the time to understand the oppressors. I mean, they are human too, right? And when I talk about oppressors, I don't just mean talking about political leaders in power. An oppressor can be a representative of a religious authority. An oppressor could be someone who claims some sort of moral authority, someone who will use religion, patriotism, tradition, or assumed moral standards of society to stifle your freedom of expression. An oppressor might not even be a person. It could be a group of people or even a whole society. And oppressors will fight humor and comedy in many ways. And there's actually a checklist for the steps or the things that they go through to face satire. So yes, I have come up with a checklist, kind of a quick go-to guide to help you identify them. And I think you will find some items on this list very familiar. Number one, oppressors tend to belittle comedians. They will call them jokes, clowns, fools. But in the process, they are the ones turning into jokes. They are the ones becoming clowns, and they are the ones making fools out of themselves. Number two, oppressors will tell you that it is not the right time to use humor. You need to be sensitive about when to use satire. People are not ready for this. It's never the right time for them. But for them, it's always the right time to take away your freedom in the name of God, social, moral codes, or even national security. Number three, oppressors will put limits on what you can talk about. They will tell you you can't make fun or criticize or question our symbols. And by the way, a symbol could be a leader, a historical character, an ideology, a statue, or a flag. Number four, oppressors will alienate people and turn them against you. They will say that you don't have the best interest of the country at heart. They will call you unpatriotic, godless, even a traitor or an infidel. Personal experience. Number five, that is one of their best weapons. They will use their best and most effective weapon, fear. Fear sells, fear works, fear moves the masses. Scare the hell out of people, make them and they will believe anything that you tell them. Make them worry about their safety, identity, religion, and tell them the whole world is going to be against them. Fear is the perfect weapon. But sarcasm is the perfect weapon for fear. When you laugh, you're not afraid anymore. But they don't want that. They want you scared and afraid, or naked and afraid, like that reality TV show. They definitely want you not laughing and not thinking. And by the way, not laughing and not thinking is what Trump looks for in a woman. Lots of Trump supporters here, I don't know. Seem to be offended every time I mention him. Anyways. Sarcasm comes from the Greek word sarkasmus. I'm not making this up. Which means to flesh, to rend, to dissect. Sarcasm helps us use laughter to dissect the lies of propaganda and helps people hack their way down to the truth. So as you can see now, I didn't really stray away from my original profession as a doctor. My mom would be very happy. Finally, number six. When everything fails, they will accuse you of being offensive, insensitive, impolite, rude, a danger to society's moral code, whatever the hell that means. They will demand that you should be reasonable and polite, but they will commit the worst atrocities and don't find that offensive or insensitive. Satire is meant to offend. It is meant to disrupt. It is meant to insult. And if the oppressors feel insulted or offended, well, you're doing a very good job. So as you can imagine, while hosting my show, many told me that you're doing this in the wrong way. You're wrong, you're offensive, you're unpatriotic, you're sacrilegious. You should not be here. I look back at my life in Egypt and I remember how I had to deal with two authoritarian regimes, religious and military, and their supporters who were offended by satire, but not by oppression. Those were the people who found ample time to persecute others, but didn't seem to have enough time for a couple of jokes. Authority was insulted by humor, but not by injustice. Authority and their supporters were offended by subversive satire, but not by tyranny. Oppressors and their supporters will fight satire and humor because satire disrupts the status quo. And the status quo is the only thing keeping these people in power. That is why it's hard to find good satirists on the right wing. I'm sure. They don't challenge the status quo. Also, their jokes are very lame. Anyways. I look back at my days as a performer, as a satirist in Egypt, as someone who was not supposed to do all of that, and yet managed to get under the authority's skin. I pissed them off so bad that when they're out of tricks, they just came after me with the most ridiculous accusations. I was accused of many things, not just of being a traitor, that's easy, but actually, specifically, I was accused of being a spy, recruited and trained by Jon Stewart under the supervision of the CIA. I stand corrected. Authoritarian regimes have a hilarious sense of humor. I suffer persecution, pressure, arrest, interrogation, saw my show being canceled twice. I saw very close friends and family members believe the negative propaganda against me, cut ties with me, and even disowned me. I endured exile, loss of money and loved ones, and that little voice came back into my brain to haunt me. Told you, you're not supposed to be here. So I left my country, fleeing from a dictatorship, came to America just in time for you as you are starting your own. For the first time in history, America is actually looking up for us. They are using us as an example. I mean, the Middle East gave you guys algebra, basics of medicine, and astronomy, and now we are becoming an example to follow by an orange dictator. That's amazing. We were once the cradle of civilization, now we are the cradle of the end of civilization. Now I'm here, performing, speaking, writing, producing in a language that is not mine, using references I didn't grow up with for an audience that is not my own. And once again, I have the fear that I'm not supposed to be here. This sentence pretty much summarized my life. I always felt out of place, always felt that I didn't fit in, and instead of let this bring me down, I found refuge in the challenge. I found salvation in change, and I found in emancipation in letting go of what I was comfortable with. I made a living out of being a performer here, whether that was being a comedian, satirist, public speaker, or actor. And as I look back on my life, I can see now that the same thing that terrified me was the same thing that gave me freedom, and was the same thing that annoyed authority. I talked today about how authority is very hostile against humor and satire, but their censorship doesn't just stop at that. History teaches us that painters, actors, singers, comedians, poets, writers have all been the targets of oppressors. It is not just satire. It is the mere act of liberating your mind through art, performance, and creativity that really pisses them off. A creative mind is a liberated mind, and a liberated mind is the oppressor's biggest enemy. It is imaginative, it is unpredictable, and it is a problem. Oppressors have limited imagination, and no matter how smart they are coming up with ways to control and maintain power, deep inside they are very, very stupid. That's why they will censor, ban, and prevent any form of human artistic innovation. Not just because it exposes how limited they are, but because it allows masses to break away from their comfort zone. It pushes people to question their authority and their entitlement. Art, in its free, liberated form, is uncomfortable, disruptive, and unpredictable. These are all qualities that authorities don't like. These are traits that oppressors will fight. These are dangers that dictators will always seek to destroy. A creative populace is an inquisitive populace. A society that respects and encourages creativity is a society with too many questions, and oppressors don't like questions. Oppressors don't like to be held accountable. Questioning is such an unwelcomed habit. I come from a region in the world that is going through very tough time right now. Many would look at this region and would think of giving up. Many think that the Arab Spring was an unnecessary disaster. But if you look beyond the destruction and the disappointment, you can see the silver lining. You can see millions of young people practicing something that their parents were deprived of, questioning. They question everything now, the military, religion, and even society norms and traditions. And they do that through celebrating their creativity, their innovation, and through their own discovery of art, humor, and love for performance. Questioning is the prequel of a revolution. So maybe we haven't seen the end of it yet. Maybe we're just warming up. So I invite you all to live in discomfort, to make art that is annoying, disruptive, and unconventional. Celebrate art, humor, and the love of performance, and know that if you are making certain people angry, furious, and uncomfortable, then probably you are doing something right. And if you have this little voice talking to you, telling you that you should not be there, maybe this is where you should say, I know, and I like it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I think there are Q&A. And by the way, I would like to thank the amazing people from Pomegranate Arts. Yes, Linda and Lisa, baby. If you want to book me, they have my number. So I think there are Q&A. I don't know where people should stand. There are. Oh yes, yes. So people are interested to ask anything. Going once, going twice. Oh, there's one. Okay, yes, sir.
I understand that when you began that you struggled with the translation of humor from Arabic to English.
Still do.
We live in a world of words, and yet the ideas are not limited to the language. I wonder if you have developed any rules, tricks that have allowed you to make that translation more universal.
I watch a lot of Friends and Seinfeld. No, but seriously speaking, you are raising a very important point, because you can speak a certain language fluently, but like humor is a third language. I mean, so and I want to make I want to tell you a little story. There was a documentary that's made by a wonderful movie maker. Her name is Sarah Taxler. She's a producer on The Daily Show. She followed me for 4 years, and she made a very nice documentary called Tickling Giants. And this movie, when she was subtitling the movie, she had a problem translating the humor. And she tried so many translators, and because, as you know, literal translation doesn't work. So she had to find someone who would translate the intent and the context. It was very difficult. So yes, you could. It doesn't matter how well you speak a certain language. It really depends on like how much you try to understand it. So I do what people do. I just watch cable, and I watch Larry David a lot, and I hate myself.
Shukran.
In a good way. I love him. I mean, just like the self-resentment is amazing. Okay. Yes.
Yes, hello. My name's Lauren Snelling. I am the director at Ozarts in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're incredibly proud.
I was there.
Hey, I know. We're incredibly proud to have presented Bassem Youssef in Nashville in November of last year to a sold-out crowd of the majority of people Arabic speakers, which was tremendously exciting in a red state. And
yeah, we just like we kind of like smoked them out of their homes. Yeah. I mean, I think this is what ICE should do, kind of use me, and then like when the illegal immigrants come up. Yes. But hey, half of the crowd was American too.
That's
there was
right.
a guy wearing like "Make America Great Again," and he was sitting there, it's like, is this guy going to kill me? But like, he was actually one of the nicest people there. I mean, we have, no, he was very nice, sorry. Yes, go ahead, sorry.
It's all true. So Bassem, I'm curious, given the way that you have been able to find a way to disrupt, and that you find it so important to continue pushing, what can you talk a little bit about your goals or your objectives or ways that you really would like to see the work that you're doing progress, or ideas or things that you would like to do to continue that now that you're a permanent resident here in our country?
A legal permanent resident, yes. Yeah, so when I was in Egypt, my goal was different from where I'm here now, because in Egypt we had something else to deal with. Here, as a resident of this country now, I see there's a shift in the kind of conversation people are having about people like me, like immigrants, and I want to I want to bring to the table a different kind of discussion through humor that would have people like us tell our stories in an interesting, funny, and engaging way. And I think the kind of fear or misconception that people have about others is that they don't know their stories. So when they hear many of us speak, they will have a better understanding of who we are, where we come from, and what is our agenda, which is not at all threatening to their existence, because this is what they are told. So hopefully I will have the chance, the opportunity to have more people like me visible in the media, not just on performance stage, but hopefully in the wider media. And by the way, I mean, I just like, you know, for everybody's credit here, I know that like people are very hard about like what's happening here in America and how some people are racist. We have the same thing in the Arab world too. People come from the Arab world will tell you that racism and hate towards people that they know is quite endemic there too. And this is because we do not get the chance to hear people's point of view or perspectives or stories, because we follow what our political or religious leaders tell us. It's the same thing. But the difference here is people have this kind of a corrective mechanism that we have to do something about it. We need to have a conversation about it. We need to question and talk about it. And this is what I like about this country. It's like it's always evolving, always trying to dig deep and make it better. I know that many people say, why are you complaining a lot? You're in the best country of the world. But the thing is, the complaining here is because that you want things to be better. You're not satisfied of just like be okay. You want to be perfect. You want to be great. When people come to me and said, you think that we are little babies and ungrateful because we complain about our political problems? Well, in the rest of the world, there are much more horrible problems. Well, joking, I say yes, but actually, you should be complaining because you have paid for this kind of service. You cannot go to a 5-star hotel and then have like a very horrible cold dish. It's like, well, people in Africa are starving. Well, I'm sorry for people in Africa, but I paid for that kind of dish. You paid for this kind of liberty and democracy, and you should actually not receive any less of a treatment or a terms of services, because this is what you have paid for. This is what you have struggled for, and this is the continuous. And so whenever you find someone who is running on a platform that like you hate your country because you complain too much, don't be thrown off of that. Don't say that you're ungrateful. You actually do this because you actually love your country more than anybody. I was accused of a self-hating Arab, a self-hating Egyptian, a self-hating Muslim because I complained, because I criticized the status quo. People who criticize the status quo, they do that out of hate, but out of pure love and pure appreciation to the fact of who they are. So continue doing what you do. You're great. Thank you.
Hi. You spoke about your mother quite a bit and your family. When you moved over here, I know you live here with your wife and children, and did your mother stay there?
It's a sad story because my mom kind of passed away like before I escaped. But like both of my parents, but it's great, it's fine. They didn't have to. Actually, I looked at it as a blessing because they didn't have to endure the hardship that I went through, and all of the memories I have with them is great memories with them. But like if you're talking about like my extended family, I have my brother. He's still there, but he comes and visit. And but it's here. It's just like me, my wife, and 2 kids. I have Nadia, 5.5 years old, and Adam, 5 months, so he is my anchor baby. So I'm sorry I cut you off because I didn't want you to continue because...
No, but then your extended family that's there, do they feel any effect of who you are and what you're doing and what you're saying?
Well, my brother kind of like had some, I don't want to say harassments, but some difficulties, but because they kind of like when they don't get you, they get for the people that you care for, but luckily it didn't go too far. So I had to modify my, me being too vocal here, so kind of to protect him back in Egypt. But in any ways, I'm more focused now about what's happening here for me, because that is this is like the future of my children here. So this is why I'm more concerned of what's going to happen in this country more, because this is what they're going to grow up and find and have to deal with. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Islam.
And my question is, with coming here to the States and with Islam, have you had a grand acceptance? Like, what has been, I guess, the rest, how people receive you now that you're here in the U.S. from, that are already here?
Well, people will receive, here's the thing, whether you're a Muslim or Jewish or Christian or atheist, I think people will have to deal with you according to what you represent to them. I try to give always like a very informed, educated form of who I am, and people will accept that. I think, and it doesn't really have to do with who you are, but it's like how you present yourself. If you go in and try to actually push your agenda down people's throat, people will kind of like be a little bit alienated. If you try to victimize yourself or remind everybody that they are racist or that you hate me for who I am, people will kind of like not accept you. And I think like a good way to actually start that is to start a decent conversation peppered with humor and satire, and people will always be accepted, people will always be open to that. I have a friend of mine here in New York, Dean Abidallah, I'm sure that you know him. He is a radio host, a comedian, and he did this documentary called The Muslims Are Coming, and they had stand-up comedy shows in the deepest of the deep south, sorry. And they were people accepted them, and people liked them, and people embraced them, because it doesn't really have to do with what they hear about you. It's like how you present and how you carry yourself in the conversation. And people will present you. And also, I live in California, so it's fine.
Hey, how you doing?
Yes, hi.
I thought I'd play a little game of what would Bassem do about fake news, because I'll give a quick example. I was procrastinating on writing a grant, which I'm sure nobody in this room knows anything about. And someone said Social Security is bankrupt on social media. So I stupidly put the link of the Social Security audit up, which shows all of the numbers, including all of the bank accounts that you can check for yourself to see, in fact, that Social Security has a surplus. This was not from the media. It was an actual, document financial audit. And I was given the response of, that's fake news. So what do you do when you give someone evidence, facts, and the response is fake news?
You can't really do much about it, because they really don't care about facts, whether on the right or on the left, by the way. And this is why one of the most common questions that I get is like, how do you reach to the other people on the aisle? You can't. It's just because they are set in their own ways. They have chosen a certain ideology, and then they would build the facts around it. They don't wait for a fact to prove or disprove whatever they're thinking. And I have been like dealing with that for a long time in Egypt, whether people believe certain ideology through religious or military indoctrination. They shut their ears. They don't care. So I really don't have like a clear answer for this. You can just like spread the facts, and hopefully when they hear from someone that they trust or they can listen to, they will believe it. But they don't really like the facts. They kind of like, they hate you, and I'm sorry, but like they don't trust that sort of information coming from a political stance that they do not believe. So, I'm sorry, it's not satisfied. I don't even understand what Social Security is. Okay.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're here.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I'm from San Francisco, and I'm so glad you live with us on the left coast. That's a wonderful thing. So you said you're focused on being here and what's going on and what we should do. So tell us what we should do.
No, I cannot tell you what you should do. I can know what I can do. I mean, I'm...
Then tell us what you can do.
I'm trying to get like a much bigger space for me and the people come from my part of the world in the media to be more represented, because I cannot really like I can't you're kind of asking me a question what you should do, and this is a question that all of the pundits on CNN shows have failed to tell you. So, yeah, well, I mean, again, I can only be responsible for what I can do to spread like more of a different image for people to listen to my part of the world. But like my biggest advice for anybody, don't be a dick. That's my, be nice and be nice and love people, and hopefully other people who are dicks will stop being dicks too. Yes.
I feel like I came up after the mic drop line, so that's challenging.
Yes.
So you grew up in a certain culture. I wonder if when you moved to the United States, did you find that there was an ideology that you grew up with that was challenged once you moved here?
Well, a lot. But that doesn't, I don't think that will be different if I moved from the Middle East or I moved from a very conservative town in the United States. I think it's not really about the United States, it's like where you go. I think if you live in the United States, if you're in New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, it will be totally different if you live in a very small town in a very conservative part of the United States. I think a lot of my ideologies were challenged over the years because I was coming and going from the United States a lot. I think my ideas about people's tendencies to believe or not to believe has been challenged a lot. I think people's tendencies to be who they are, whatever that could be, to follow a certain religion or non-religion or a certain orientation or a certain political direction has all been changed and reformatted in my brain many times. And I think the person that I was 10 years ago is nowhere to be found now. I think I've changed a lot of what I thought was set in stone. And this is also part of the thing that I talked about in my speech, which is questioning everything that you have grew up with, questioning everything that you've been told or indoctrinated. And I think that was a very lovely trip that I went through, and I am very appreciative of that. So, yeah, thank you. All right, I think that, all right, one last question, and this should be the best question of the day.
Oh my goodness.
The pressure now is on you.
Hello.
That's a great start, yes.
My name is Celine Opdyke, and I'm a student, and I go to Oberlin College and Conservatory, and I'm actually double majoring in biology and jazz voice.
You are a nerd like me.
Exactly. So, a big question that I've been thinking about as I go through college is...
Yeah, don't be a doctor.
Just how can I do my part in changing the world and helping people? And obviously there's an easy answer in biology. I have been thinking about becoming a surgeon, but but on the arts part, I've heard a lot of people say that it's kind of selfish to go to the arts and become a musician or whatever, because it's just fulfilling something that you enjoy doing, which from being here is obviously wrong, because there are a lot of artists who are doing a huge, amazing thing. But exactly. So
stay here for a while and. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you if you had any advice for somebody who is thinking about doing something like that, and because political satire has kind of more of a I guess it's easier to wrap your mind around changing people's perspectives through humor. But as a musician and as a jazz singer, how I guess I'm just wondering if you have any advice for somebody.
Okay,
where
so
that's
so
like a
so here's
little
the
bit-
thing about like giving advice for people, for younger people in college. My best advice is never listen to my advice, and I'll tell you why. Because you belong to a different generation, circumstances, and variables that I wasn't exposed to. You write your own destiny because you are a much better judge of what you can do in your life. You cannot take an advice from a 43 years old guy who has lived in Egypt, who had variables and certain circumstances who are not related to you. I cannot tell you can do this or do that because you will be, and this is actually one of the most common questions I get when I go to college. It's like, guys, you are a better judge of what to do. You have tools that I have never dreamt of having when I was growing up. I mean, you have Bitcoin. I don't know what even is Bitcoin. I don't know what is that, and how can people buy it. So you have your access to technology, to information, by far exceeds of what I had growing up and what I have right now. So you are the best judge of what you can do in your life. But the thing is, and one thing I would comment, if music is what you love, do what you love, really, because you can still create change and impose change through what you love. If you love something, it will, as strong enough, you will make people love it too. And that is not selfish. That is amazing because you are, and so I mean, follow your heart for what you love and not for what is other people have excelled to, because you might not be good in political satire. You could be much better. I mean, I can't even play 2 straight notes on a piano. I don't know what's a piano. So you can have the power of change because you can do it through something that you can love and you have passion for. And again, don't follow other people's path for your own variables, for your own choices. You are much better judge than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a great day. Go APAP. It's APAP, not APAP. Thank you very much. Pomegranate Arts.
Please, another round of applause for that amazing, amazing human being. Thank you, Bassem. All right, this is the moment I've been waiting for. This ends our 2018 conference. Thank you.